Brett Favre is not going down without a fight. He and his team have filed an amended complaint to strike back at the motion to dismiss that Pat McAfee filed back in March. And can I just say, as a lawyer, as America's attorney, that this back and forth between these two is extremely entertaining to watch and to report on. Make sure that you don't miss any future reports by lawyering up and subscribing to this channel right now. Now, before this video ends, I'm going to tell you exactly what McAfee is going to file next and why he will do it the way that he does it. As you well know, as super fans of Pat McAfee and this channel, Pat McAfee filed a motion to dismiss at the end of March of 2023. In this sharp and well-written motion, he made 4 arguments as to why the Favre lawsuit should be punted out of court. First, he claimed that Favre's lawsuit had failed to include that McAfee said the magic words everyone says to protect themselves from defamation, allegedly. Well, it was bigger than that. He actually accused Favre of taking out of context his potentially defamatory statements because in other parts of the broadcast, he made it clear that no one yet knows for sure what Favre did or didn't do. Secondly, he claimed that the social media post that Favre's lawsuit tried to present as evidence of defamation was innuendo and not purporting to be a fact. His motion also claimed that McAfee's statements were protected by the First Amendment because he was reporting on government action, namely the Mississippi Department of Human Services lawsuit. Next, McAfee asserted that instead of the 10-day safe harbor notice that he is owed under Mississippi law, Favre only gave him 6 days. Lastly, McAfee's motion to dismiss reminded the judge that Favre was a public figure, and to win a defamation claim, Favre's team has to prove that McAfee spoke with
actual malice.
McAfee asserted in his motion that Favre failed to make a meaningful effort in his pleading to meet this standard in his original lawsuit. I go into a lot more detail about each argument in my last video update about this lawsuit. Make sure you check it out. After you finish this video, you wouldn't want to hurt my algorithm, would you? As you can see, McAfee gave the judge several reasons for throwing the lawsuit out. And when a defendant files a motion to dismiss, the plaintiff, that's Favre, has to make a strategic decision. And there are 2 options. The first is that you can file a response to the motion in which you take on the legal arguments. And that's a fine approach if the problems asserted in the motion to dismiss are only legal theory problems, and there's not also an allegation that the way that you have pled the complaint is somehow deficient. Then you'd file a response to the motion to dismiss in which you explain that the defendant, that's McAfee, is wrong about the legal theories and your case is fine as it is. But if the motion to dismiss includes the argument that your complaint should fail not because, or rather, not only because the plaintiff didn't actually lay out a proper description of an illegal act, meaning that you are entitled to money because of what the defendant did, then rather than argue about that, the correct approach is usually to file a new complaint in which you seek to cure the deficiencies in how you explained what happened. Wow, that was quite a sentence. And you typically have 2 weeks to do that. And in fact, that's what Favre did here. He filed a new complaint that replaces the old complaint. But in this amended complaint, Favre's team only meaningfully addresses 2 of the 4 shortcomings. Whether McAfee is entitled to dismissal because he was commenting on official proceedings, and that McAfee's assertion that Favre failed to originally allege that McAfee spoke with
actual malice.
Now, let's first address the way Favre has tried to handle the commentary on official proceedings defense. This is the type of word wrangling that causes normal people to sometimes hate lawyers, for real. We have to go back to McAfee's statement on the November 30th show, which was, to boil it down, that Favre had allegedly stolen from the poor people of Mississippi. In paragraph 23 of the amended complaint, Favre asserts that McAfee's statement cannot possibly be considered a reasonable and good faith commentary on the official proceedings because there was no official proceeding that said exactly that Favre had stolen money. But this kind of hair splitting misses the point on purpose. Favre was a defendant in a civil proceeding for the recovery of money from the Mississippi government. Does it matter that it was embezzled and not stolen, allegedly? Does it matter that he already agreed to repay some of it, allegedly? I mean, look, I appreciate Favre's high-priced lawyers trying to turn this in Favre's favor, but I think that any reasonable person on a jury is going to understand that McAfee understood from the official proceedings, and definitely from the media coverage of them, that Favre ended up with, potentially on purpose, allegedly, Money that was not supposed to be used for his benefit, but instead designated for the benefit of the poor people of Mississippi, allegedly. So, while on the one hand, I say this sort of word gamesmanship is one of the reasons that people really sometimes don't like lawyers, on the other hand, I have to say, good job to Favre's lawyers, because they really do have to try to address the glaring problem in the lawsuit if they want to move forward. Which brings me to a stunningly insightful, if legally impossible, comment from LoveBear55 on my last video. Honestly, at this point, Brett Favre needs to sue himself for defamation because McAfee and the boys have our hearts and makes every one of us dislike Brett Favre more. This is just a joke overall because it was a pointless lawsuit. So who defamed Brett Favre more? I think LoveBear has it right. If Favre wants to sue someone for defamation, he needs to start with the man in the mirror. Nope, not talking about Michael Jackson. I'm talking about himself. But of course, that's not legally possible. So, sorry LoveBear55, that's not gonna happen, but thanks for commenting. Now, of course, the meat of the amended complaint, over 10 new paragraphs, is that Favre attempts to prove that McAfee acted with
actual malice.
So let's go over these paragraphs. Sidebar, but to fully understand whether the amended complaint is effective in proving
actual malice,
we need to know, how does one prove
actual malice?
Here's how. Of course,
Actual malice
doesn't have anything to do with hating someone, but instead it focuses on whether the publisher of the supposedly defamatory statements either knew that what he was saying was actually false or that he acted with reckless disregard for whether it was true or false. In the amended complaint, Favre's lawyers explained that McAfee relied on media reports to make his statements, but none of these reports actually stated that Favre stole money. They just stated that Favre was named as one of the defendants in a civil lawsuit brought by the Mississippi Department of Human Services. Many media reports stated that Favre hadn't been a part of the criminal charges. The new lawsuit also says that it wasn't alleged in the MDHS lawsuit that Favre had knowingly received welfare funds. When McAfee made claims that Favre had stolen money, it couldn't have been based on media reports or government documents or court filings because none of those existed. So when McAfee said what he said, it must have been for one of two reasons. Number one, he knew that what he was saying were lies and the products of his imagination. Or two, he doubted his statements were true and knew they were probably false. The lawsuit added claims that McAfee should have taken Favre's career and life story into account when making his statements. He knew that Favre had never committed or been accused of committing theft, larceny, fraud, or other such crimes, just sexual harassment and maybe some drug or alcohol abuse. Knowing this, McAfee should have suspected that the statements were improbable. To sum up Favre's amended allegations of
actual malice,
McAfee was aware that there were no media reports, government documents, or court filings stating that Favre had stolen money. The reports actually indicated the opposite, that Favre didn't knowingly receive welfare funds and that he was not charged with a crime. And two, McAfee was aware of Favre's background. And three, McAfee was motivated to spread lies for publicity and attention, what the young people call clout. Favre's lawyer didn't fail to mention how hard McAfee is sticking to his guns. However, they paint it as proof that the lie is the point. The lie is what is helping McAfee get social media views and likes and followers. They even bring up quotes from McAfee's podcast when he addressed the lawsuit. And let me refresh your memory.
Our job is to report the news, as we owe the sports media world our coverage of it. We take our job seriously as journalists.
Favre's lawyers stated that McAfee's claims about being a journalist contradict his claims that he was just making those statements in comedic jest or hyperbolic rhetoric. Will Favre's amended complaint work? It's unlikely. It's not necessary that Favre be charged with a crime in order for McAfee to be off the hook for saying that Favre allegedly stole money. Allegedly. The fact that the state sued Favre to recover money, allegedly, is enough to allow McAfee to describe the event as stealing. So let's talk about what happens next, because when this video opened, I boldly told you that I would tell you in this video exactly what McAfee is going to do next. And here it is. When an amended complaint is filed, that's like sticking the paperclip into the side of your iPhone. That's a hard reset. It's like McAfee's original motion to dismiss was never filed because the amended complaint moots the prior filing's claims. So Pat's lawyers are going to hit the save as button on the motion to dismiss, and they will file a version that is very, very similar to the one that they already filed. First of all, Favre didn't even try to address 2 of the 4 grounds for dismissal that were raised in the first motion to dismiss. So those will come back into play in round 2. Next, while Favre tried, he really tried to address 2 of the grounds for dismissal, he really didn't do a great job of it. Maybe he did enough to save the lawsuit from immediate dismissal on those 2 grounds, but the reality is that McAfee's best arguments, namely the 10-day safe harbor law that was not satisfied by Favre, and that Favre took Pat's statements out of context, well, those have not been addressed at all. Now, in federal court, you only get one free amended complaint. When McAfee's lawyers file the new motion to dismiss, which, as I said, will be about 75% the same as the first one, Favre will then have to address the legal issues, not merely address the pleadings issues like he did in the amended complaint. And that's not going to go well for Favre because it's clear that he really did cherry pick a couple of lines from the November 30th show and that the statements in their broader context are legally defensible. And Favre, bless his interception throwing heart, even his amended complaint details how he gave 6 days instead of 10 days of safe harbor notice. So now we twiddle our thumbs and wait for McAfee's next motion to dismiss. He now has just about a week left to file that. But like I said, we already pretty much know what's going to be in it. Now, I think I've made it pretty obvious how I feel about the strength of this new amended complaint, but I want to know if it convinced you. Do you feel like Favre and his lawyers properly addressed McAfee's claims that he was just reporting the governmental action and that he had no provable actual malice? Let me know your pro se opinion down below in the comments. And if you haven't seen my videos explaining Favre's original defamation lawsuit or McAfee's motion to dismiss, what are you doing? You're watching the videos out of order. Check them out right here, and I will be back soon with another update on this case. See ya.